The first thing Joseph felt was pain, not the sharp, defined kind that comes from a single wound, but the dull, pervasive ache of a body that had been thoroughly broken and was now reluctantly mending itself. The second thing he became aware of was heat, dry, relentless heat that seemed to press against his skin even through the thin fabric covering him. When he finally managed to open his eyes, the world appeared as a blur of amber and rust, a tent ceiling, made of some kind of treated canvas that filtered the harsh sunlight into a warm glow. The air smelled of antiseptic, unfamiliar herbs, and beneath it all, the mineral tang of desert dust. "So, you've decided to rejoin the living." The voice was feminine, but deep, with an unusual resonance that seemed to vibrate in his chest rather than his ears. Joseph turned his head, wincing at the effort. She was tall, taller than any human woman he'd ever seen, with golden brown fur covering most of her visible skin. Her face was cat-like yet unmistakably intelligent, with high cheekbones and large, almond-shaped eyes of deep amber. But what drew his attention most was the thick, muscular tail that swayed gently behind her as she moved closer to his bedside. "Dahari," his mind supplied, though he couldn't remember how he knew this. "Don't try to move too quickly," she said, checking something on a monitor beside his bed. "You've been unconscious for 3 days. Your body is still processing the trauma." Joseph attempted to speak, but his throat felt like sandpaper. The Dahari woman reached for a water pouch with a built-in straw and held it to his lips. Small sips. "Joseph, your system is still fragile." The water was cool and sweet, with a hint of something medicinal. It wasn't until she pulled the pouch away that her words registered. "How do you know my name?" His voice was a rasp, barely audible. The corner of her mouth quirked up in what might have been amusement. "You told me." "Well, not consciously. You've been quite talkative in your sleep." She set the water down and picked up a handheld scanner, running it slowly over his torso. "I'm Talra. By the way, Chief Medical Officer at Urasha Base." Joseph tried to access his memory, to recall how he'd ended up here, but found only fragments. A transport ship, a mission briefing, fire, screaming, then nothing. "What happened to me?" he asked. Talra's expression remained professionally neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. "Your transport was hit during atmospheric entry. Official report says it was a lightning strike from one of our famous electrical storms. But..." She shrugged, her shoulders rolling in a fluid, feline motion. "The wreckage suggests otherwise." "Otherwise?" "Let's focus on your recovery for now." She placed a cool hand on his forehead, and Joseph felt a strange tingling sensation, as if static electricity were dancing across his skin. "Your brain activity is stabilizing, but there's still some unusual patterns. Are you experiencing any memory gaps?" Joseph tried to sit up, ignoring the protest from his muscles. "Memory gaps? I can barely remember my own rank. Technical specialist. Interstellar Coalition Forces." Talra supplied smoothly. "Assigned to Tajak 4 for rehabilitation duty." The slight pause before rehabilitation carried a weight Joseph couldn't interpret. He frowned. "That doesn't sound right. I was on a combat mission. Something about insurgents." Talra's tail stiffened, the only break in her composed demeanor. "The official report states you were being transferred here after a successful operation against separatist forces on Eridani 6. Your transport experienced difficulties during entry, and you sustained significant injuries." She turned away, adjusting something on her medical tablet. "But that's not what you've been saying in your sleep." A chill ran down Joseph's spine despite the heat. "What have I been saying?" She looked at him directly now, her amber eyes seeming to peer into places deeper than flesh. "Among other things, don't let them take my memories." Joseph felt his heart rate accelerate, the monitor beside him beeping in response. Images flashed through his mind. A sterile room, the smell of ozone, faces without features looking down at him, pain, Not physical, but something deeper, as if parts of his very self were being extracted. "I don't," he began, but was interrupted by a deep, rumbling voice from the tent entrance. "Healer Talra, the council requires your report on the human's condition." The figure that ducked through the entrance was even taller than Talra, with gray-streaked fur and an elaborate harness adorned with what looked like bone talismans. His tail was thicker, the fur more coarse, and his eyes were a piercing blue that contrasted sharply with his dark brown coat. "Elder Kalen," Talra acknowledged with a slight bow of her head. "As you can see, the patient is conscious and stable. I'll prepare a full report for the council by evening." Kalen barely glanced at Joseph, but when he did, the look contained centuries of suspicion. "The coalition commander has been requesting updates. They seem unusually concerned about this one soldier." "I'll handle the coalition representatives," Talra replied, her tone respectful but firm. "As I've informed them repeatedly, medical protocols apply to all patients equally, regardless of species or rank." The elder made a sound that might have been a scoff. "So they claim to believe as well, yet history suggests otherwise." He turned to leave, then paused. "The human bears the mark of neural manipulation. You're aware of this?" Talra's tail swished once. Sharply. "I've noted anomalies in his neural patterns." "Yes." "Then be cautious. Healer. Those who tamper with memories rarely do so for benevolent reasons." With that, Elder Kalen ducked out of the tent, leaving behind a tension that hung in the air like the desert heat. Joseph waited until he was certain the elder was gone before speaking. What did he mean? Neural manipulation. Talra busied herself checking his bandages. Elder Kalen lived through the border wars. He has strong opinions about coalition military practices. That's not an answer. Her hands stilled on his arm. "No, it's not," she sighed. A surprisingly human gesture. "Your brain scans show patterns consistent with synaptic restructuring. It's a technology the coalition officially denies using. But..." She gestured vaguely. "Evidence suggests otherwise." Joseph felt sick. "Are you saying someone altered my memories?" "I'm saying it's a possibility we shouldn't ignore." Talra's voice softened. "Especially given what you've been saying while unconscious." He closed his eyes, trying to grasp at the fragments floating in his mind. A woman with a tail, but not Talra. Younger, scared, reaching for him, the smell of antiseptic, the sound of a child crying. "I think I need to rest," he said finally, not ready to face the implications of what she was suggesting. Talra nodded, adjusting his medication drip. "That's wise. Your body needs time to heal." She moved toward the tent entrance, then hesitated. "Joseph, whatever happened to you, whatever they may have taken from you, there are ways to find what's lost. If you're willing to look." After she left, Joseph lay staring at the amber-tinted ceiling, trying to reconcile the official story with the scattered images in his head, and the unsettling feeling that he'd been hollowed out and refilled with something that wasn't quite himself. Outside, he could hear the sounds of the base, machinery humming, voices calling to each other in both human languages, and the melodic tones of the Dahari. This place was supposed to be his assignment, yet it felt alien. Or perhaps he was the alien element here, a broken piece that no longer fit its intended space. As sleep began to reclaim him, one thought persisted. If his memories had been taken, what had they contained that someone wanted hidden? Hours later, after the twin moons of Tajak 4 had risen, casting their pale blue light through the tent's translucent walls, Talra sat alone in her private quarters. Before her lay Joseph's medical scans, the neural patterns glowing in complex three-dimensional representations. She traced a finger along one particularly disrupted pathway, her expression tight with concentration and something deeper, rage, carefully controlled and channeled into purpose. "I know what they did to you," she whispered to the empty room. The same thing they did to others. To her. She reached into a hidden compartment in her personal effects and withdrew a small, holographic projector. Activating it, revealed the image of a younger Dahari female, her fur a lighter shade than Talra's, her smile bright and innocent. 6 years. Lyra. Talra said to the image. 6 years since they took you for that cultural exchange program. Not a word. Not a trace. Her claws extended unconsciously, dimpling the surface of her desk. But his memories, they're the key. I can feel it. She deactivated the hologram and leaned back, her tail curling around her leg, a self-soothing gesture from childhood. What she was contemplating violated every medical oath she'd taken, not to mention the trust of her people. Using her empathic abilities to probe Joseph's damaged mind was risky for both of them. But if his fractured memories could lead her to the truth about the missing Dahari children, about her sister, wasn't that worth any risk? Talra made her decision. She would help Joseph recover, gain his trust, and together they would reconstruct what had been taken from him, what had been taken from all of them. Outside her window, the desert winds picked up, sending swirls of sand against the reinforced glass. A whispered warning, perhaps, or a promise of the storm to come. Chapter 2. What did they make me forget? Joseph woke with a gasp, his body drenched in sweat despite the climate-controlled tent. The nightmare clung to him like a second skin, a woman with a tail. But not Talra, younger, her eyes wide with terror as she reached for him through a barrier of some kind, her mouth forming words he couldn't hear, and behind her, shadows moving with mechanical precision, their faceless forms somehow more terrifying than any monster his imagination could conjure. He sat up, wincing as his healing wounds protested. The chronometer beside his bed showed it was just past dawn. 4 days had passed since he'd regained consciousness, and with each day, the gaps in his memory became more apparent, more troubling. Joseph reached for the datapad Talra had left him and pulled up his service record. Technical Specialist Joseph Kane, 8 years of service with the Interstellar Coalition Forces, decorated twice for valor during the Proxima conflicts, recently transferred from combat operations to technical support after sustaining injuries on Eridani 6. It was all there, neatly documented, and it all felt wrong. He scrolled to the section on his last mission, a separatist uprising on Eridani 6. Heavy casualties. Joseph's unit credited with extracting critical intelligence that led to the conflict's resolution. Joseph himself, wounded during the final extraction. Recommended for rehabilitation duty on Tajak 4. But when he tried to recall the mission, all he could summon were disconnected images that didn't match the report. No battlefield, no firefight. Instead, he remembered sterile corridors, the smell of antiseptic, and eyes, amber eyes like Talra's, but filled with fear instead of compassion. The tent flap rustled as Talra entered, carrying a tray of medical supplies. She paused when she saw him sitting up, studying the datapad. "You should be resting," she said, setting down her tray. "Hard to rest when your own mind feels like a stranger." Joseph turned the datapad toward her. "This says I was wounded extracting intelligence on Eridani 6, fighting separatists." Talra's tail swished once, betraying tension despite her neutral expression. "That's the official report." "Yes." "I don't remember any of it." Joseph set the datapad down with controlled precision. "But I remember things that aren't in there, things that don't make sense." Talra busied herself checking his vitals, her movements graceful despite her size. "Neural trauma can cause memory distortion. It's not uncommon." "Stop." Joseph caught her wrist, surprising both of them with the sudden contact. Her fur was softer than he'd expected. "You know something. When I woke up, you said I'd been talking in my sleep about memories being taken." She didn't pull away. "I told you what I heard. But that's not all, is it?" Joseph released her wrist but held her gaze. "The elder called you healer, not doctor, and he mentioned neural manipulation like it was something he'd seen before, something he expected. Talra's ears flattened slightly. A tell. Though Joseph wasn't sure what it signified. The Dahari have certain abilities that human medical science doesn't fully recognize. You can read minds. It wasn't a question. That's a crude simplification. She straightened. Professional distance reasserting itself. We're empathically sensitive. Some of us can perceive emotional states, occasionally fragments of thought, especially in those who are injured or whose defenses are compromised. Joseph felt his pulse quicken. Have you been reading my mind? I've been treating your injuries, she replied evenly, both physical and neural. In doing so, I've sensed things, fragments, emotions attached to memories that don't match your official record. What kind of fragments? Her tail curled inward, a gesture that seemed unconscious. Fear, pain, a sense of violation, and... She hesitated. Children, Dahari children. The word sent a jolt through Joseph like an electrical current. Children, the crying he remembered, the eyes filled with terror. I need to see my personal effects, he said abruptly. Everything that was recovered from the crash. Talra studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I'll have them brought to you. But Joseph, whatever you find, whatever you remember, be careful who you share it with. 20 minutes later, Joseph was sifting through a pitifully small collection of items. His scorched identification tags, a partially melted comm unit, and fragments of his combat armor. Most of it was beyond salvage. The metal warped and fused from intense heat. He examined each piece methodically, looking for, he wasn't sure what, something that didn't belong, something that might explain the disconnect between his official record and the fragments floating in his mind. When he picked up a particular chunk of chestplate armor, something shifted inside it. A small object caught between the outer plating and the inner lining. Joseph worked it free, his fingers trembling slightly as it came loose. It was a device about the size of his thumbnail, metallic and streamlined, with a faint blue light still pulsing at its core. Joseph recognized it immediately as military-grade tech, though its specific purpose eluded him. Neural pulse emitter, he murmured, the words surfacing from some buried part of his training. The device was used in specialized medical procedures, or at least, that was its official purpose. There were rumors among the troops about other applications: interrogation enhancement, behavioral modification, memory suppression. As his fingers closed around it, the world lurched sideways. Flash, bright lights above, strapped down, the smell of antiseptic burning his nostrils. Flash, a child crying, small hands with fur and claws, reaching through bars. Flash, his own hand, steady and practiced, placing an identical device against the temple of a small, struggling form. Flash, a voice, clinical, detached. The subjects are responding well to the neural reconfiguration, particularly the younger ones. Flash, his own voice, questioning. And when they're no longer useful, Flash, a dismissive gesture from a figure in a coalition uniform. Memory wipe, standard procedure. Joseph dropped the device as if it had burned him, stumbling backward until he hit the edge of his bed. His heart hammered against his ribs, cold sweat prickling his skin despite the desert heat. Those weren't battlefield memories. That wasn't a military operation on Eridani 6. That was... what? A laboratory? A detention facility? And those children, Dahari children, what had been done to them? What had he done to them? No, it couldn't be real. It had to be trauma-induced hallucination. Fragments of nightmares coalescing into false memories. He'd been injured. His brain was healing. These were just misfiring neurons, creating connections that didn't exist. Joseph picked up the neural emitter again, forcing himself to examine it clinically. Standard coalition medical technology. Nothing sinister about it. Probably part of the emergency medical equipment from the transport. But why had it been hidden in his armor, not with the medical supplies? And why did holding it make him taste fear at the back of his throat? He was still staring at the device when Talra returned. She froze in the entrance, her eyes fixed on the object in his palm. "Where did you find that?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. Joseph held it up. "In my armor. Do you know what it is?" "I know what the Coalition claims they're for." Her tone had hardened. "All professional distance gone. Neural stabilization during emergency field procedures. But we Dahari have another name for them." Her eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw raw anger there. "Soul thieves." Joseph's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "During the border wars, Coalition forces used devices like that on Dahari prisoners." She approached slowly, as if the small device might attack. "Those who returned were changed, memories altered, personalities flattened. Some couldn't even recognize their own families." Joseph's hand closed around the device, suddenly desperate to hide it, as if concealing it could bury the implications of its presence. I wouldn't." "I don't believe you were a willing participant." "Joseph," Talra's voice softened. "The man I've been treating. The man who speaks in his sleep. He's haunted. Not heartless." She extended her hand. "Palm up. Let me help you find what they took from you. What they took from all of us." Joseph stared at her outstretched hand. The implications of what she was offering, and what he might discover, hovering between them like a physical presence. "And if I don't like what I find?" he asked quietly. Talra's expression was solemn. "Truth rarely comes without pain, but living a lie is its own kind of death." Her fingers remained steady, waiting. "Choose." After a long moment, Joseph placed the neural emitter in her palm, feeling as though he'd just stepped off a precipice into free fall. Whatever memory they had taken from him, whatever truth lay shattered in the recesses of his mind, he would face it, even if it destroyed the person he thought he was. Chapter 3. You're not supposed to remember that. The days that followed blended together in a rhythm of healing and revelation. Joseph's physical wounds mended faster than expected, a testament to Talra's skills and the advanced regeneration compounds used by Dahari healers. His mental landscape, however, remained a battlefield of fragmented memories and disturbing flashes that came without warning. Each morning, Talra would arrive with breakfast, a nutty porridge sweetened with local fruit, and they would begin what she called echo sessions. She would place her hands on either side of his head, her touch feather-light, and Joseph would feel that strange tingling sensation as her empathic abilities reached for the scattered pieces of his memory. It was during the fifth such session that Joseph first learned about Lyra. "I need to show you something," Talra said when they'd finished, her professional demeanor giving way to something more vulnerable. She retrieved a small, holographic projector from her medical bag and activated it. The image that shimmered into existence showed a younger Dahari female, her fur a shade lighter than Talra's, with the same amber eyes, but filled with a youthful exuberance that made Joseph's chest tighten inexplicably. "My sister, Lyra," Talra said, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. 6 years ago, the Coalition established what they called a cultural exchange program for promising young Dahari, an opportunity to study human sciences, to bridge the gap between our species. Her claws extended unconsciously, a gesture Joseph had come to recognize as emotional distress. 28 children went. None returned. "I'm sorry," Joseph said, the words feeling wholly inadequate. Talra's gaze remained fixed on the hologram. "The official explanation was a shuttle accident during transit. No survivors." Her tail lashed once, sharply, but there was no debris field. No bodies recovered, just a report, stamped and sealed by Coalition Command. Case closed. "You don't believe it. Would you?" She deactivated the projector, the image of Lyra dissolving into nothing. "Our people have always been valuable to your military, our empathic abilities, our physical adaptability. During the border wars, Dahari prisoners were often taken for special research, Many returned changed. Others never came back at all. Joseph felt a chill that had nothing to do with the tense temperature. And you think the exchange program was a cover for something similar? I know it was. There was no doubt in her voice. Just as I know your memories hold pieces of the truth, the neural emitter you found. It's the same technology they used during the wars. And your nightmares. The fragments you recall. Children with fur and tails. Joseph closed his eyes, trying to summon the courage to voice what they both suspected. You think I was part of it? Whatever they did to those children. I think you saw something you weren't supposed to see. Something that made them decide you couldn't be allowed to remember. Talra placed a hand on his arm, her touch warm through the thin fabric of his medical gown. Help me find my sister. Joseph, or at least the truth of what happened to her. In that moment, looking into her eyes so similar to those that haunted his broken memories, Joseph made a promise that would alter the course of both their lives. I will. The connection that formed between them in the days that followed went beyond healer and patient, beyond the cautious alliance of two people pursuing a common goal. As Joseph's strength returned, they began taking walks outside the medical compound. Talra, showing him the stark beauty of Urasha Base and the surrounding desert. She taught him about Dahari culture, their reverence for the natural cycles, their tradition of shared dreaming, their complex social structures based on empathic bonds rather than bloodlines. In turn, he shared what little he could remember of his life before the military, a childhood on one of the outer colonies, parents who died in a resource war, the idealism that had led him to join the coalition forces. I wanted to help build something better, he told her, as they watched Jacques Four's twin moons rise over the desert. A universe where different species could coexist, learn from each other. And instead, you found yourself part of the machine that sees difference as something to be exploited, Talra observed, not unkindly. Maybe. Joseph picked up a small stone, turning it over in his palm. Or maybe I became something worse. Talra's tail brushed against his arm, a gesture of comfort he'd come to recognize. We are more than our worst moments. Joseph, even our worst actions. It was during one of these evening walks that Joseph had his most vivid flashback yet. They had climbed to a rocky overlook that offered a view of the entire base, a collection of permanent structures surrounded by temporary habitats. The landing pads for shuttles positioned at the far edge, as the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of crimson and gold. Something about the play of light on metal triggered a cascade in Joseph's mind. Flash, a facility. Partially underground. Stark lighting. The hum of advanced machinery. Flash. Children. Dahari children. In transparent containment units. Some unconscious. Others watching with terrified eyes. Flash. A voice. Familiar now. Commander Gorell. The gene splicing is proceeding as expected. The integration of Dahari empathic capabilities with human neural architecture is showing promise, particularly in subjects 6 through 12. Flash. His own voice. Questioning. Sir. The mortality rate. Flash. Geralt. Dismissive. Acceptable losses. Specialist. This is war. Even if it's not being fought on a traditional battlefield, these hybrids will give us an edge no conventional weapon could match. Flash. A child looking directly at him. A girl. Her fur the color of sand. Her eyes, Talra's exact shade of amber. Joseph came back to himself on his knees, gasping for breath. Talra's concerned face hovering above him. What did you see? She asked, her hands steady on his shoulders. When he told her, her expression hardened into something he hadn't witnessed before, a cold fury that transformed her from healer to warrior in an instant. We need to accelerate our plan, she said. If your memories are accurate, it means they weren't just experimenting on our children. They were trying to create weapons, hybrid soldiers with Dahari empathic abilities under human control. The perfect spies, Joseph agreed grimly. Or assassins, able to sense emotions, predict movements, maybe even influence thoughts, but with absolute loyalty to their human handlers. And if my sister was part of this program, she could still be alive, Joseph finished, but possibly altered beyond recognition. Talra's claws extended fully, scoring the rock beneath them. Then, we have no time to waste. 2 days later, their urgency proved justified. Joseph was completing a series of physical exercises designed to test his recovered strength when a coalition shuttle touched down on the landing pad visible from his tent. Through the transparent section of the wall, he watched as 2 figures disembarked, one tall and imposing in a commander's uniform, the other more athletic in standard combat gear. Even at a distance, Joseph felt a visceral reaction to the commander, a combination of ingrained respect and inexplicable dread. Talra entered the tent moments later, her expression tense. Commander Garrel and Sergeant Thorne have arrived for an inspection visit. They're specifically asking about your recovery. Joseph felt the blood drain from his face. Garrel, from my memories. Yes, her voice was barely above a whisper. And they've requested a private meeting with you. Elder Kalen is trying to delay them with diplomatic protocols. But I need to see them. Joseph stood up, steadying himself against a sudden wave of dizziness. If I refuse, it will only raise suspicions. Talra looked as though she wanted to argue, but instead nodded tersely. I'll be present as your attending physician. They can't deny me that. But when Commander Garrel and Sergeant Thorne arrived at the medical tent an hour later, they were accompanied by 2 coalition security officers who positioned themselves outside the entrance. For privacy, Garrel explained with a thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. Medical matters are, after all, confidential. He was exactly as Joseph remembered from his flashbacks, tall and lean, with silver-gray hair, cut military short, and cold blue eyes that seemed to assess everything in terms of utility. Everything about him spoke of precision and control, from his immaculate uniform to the way he held himself, as if perpetually at attention. Sergeant Marcus Thorne was his opposite, more muscular, with an easy smile and relaxed posture. His brown hair had a deliberate dishevelment that suggested a casual disregard for regulations, and his uniform bore the subtle modifications common among soldiers who'd seen heavy combat. Specialist Caney, Garrel began, his voice carrying the crisp authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. I'm pleased to see you recovering well. Your incident caused quite a stir in command. Thank you, sir, Joseph replied automatically, years of military conditioning kicking in despite everything he now suspected. It's been a challenging recovery. I'm sure. Garrel turned to Talra, his expression neutral, but somehow dismissive. Your expertise is appreciated. Healer. But I'll need to speak with Specialist Caney alone now. Military protocols. Talra's tail stiffened. As Chief Medical Officer of this facility, I'm responsible for— This isn't a request, Garrel interrupted, his tone hardening slightly. Sergeant Thorne will escort you outside. Thorne stepped forward, that easy smile still in place. Just for a few minutes. Ma'am, Commander likes his debriefings private. Military habit. You understand? Joseph caught Talra's eye and gave a slight nod. They couldn't afford to provoke suspicion now. With visible reluctance, she allowed Thorne to guide her out of the tent. As soon as they were alone, Garrel's demeanor shifted subtly, the pretense of warmth evaporating like morning dew in the desert heat. Your medical reports make for interesting reading. Specialist, he said, circling Joseph's bed with measured steps. Extensive neural trauma, memory disruption, vivid dreams. He paused, fixing Joseph with a penetrating stare. Anything you'd like to share about those dreams? Joseph maintained a neutral expression through sheer force of will. Standard stress reactions. Sir, the crash was traumatic. Indeed. Garrel picked up Joseph's datapad, scrolling through it casually. "And your Dahari physician? She's been helpful with these stress reactions?" "Very professional, sir. I'm sure." Geralt set the datapad down with deliberate care. "You know, specialist, memory is a fragile thing, easily influenced, particularly after trauma. It's not uncommon for the mind to create fabrications, false narratives to fill the gaps." Joseph felt a chill spread through his chest. "I'm not sure I follow, sir." "I think you do." Geralt's voice dropped lower, almost intimate. "You were part of something important, Joseph, something necessary, but not everyone understands necessity, particularly those who haven't experienced the realities of interspecies conflict." He moved closer, his voice barely above a whisper now. "If certain fabrications were to spread, it could jeopardize not only your career, but the lives of everyone at this facility. The Dahari are valuable allies, but their history with humans is complicated, volatile. It would take very little to reignite old conflicts." The threat was clear, wrapped in layers of plausible deniability. Joseph forced himself to meet Geralt's gaze. "I understand, sir. My only concern is recovering and returning to duty." "Excellent." Geralt's smile returned, cold and calculating. "We'll be arranging transport back to Central Medical within the week. Advanced neural treatments unavailable here. For your benefit." Of course. Joseph felt his heart rate accelerate but kept his expression neutral. "Of course, sir. Thank you for the consideration." "Commander," called Thorn from outside the tent, "the Elder is requesting your presence for the formal welcome ceremony." Geralt straightened, military posture reasserting itself. "We'll speak again before departure. Specialist, rest well." As soon as Geralt had left, Talra slipped back into the tent, her expression tight with concern. "What did he say?" "They're planning to take me back to Central Medical within the week." Joseph kept his voice low. "Which means we have days, not weeks, before they try to wipe my memories again, or worse." Talra's claws extended reflexively. "Then, we need to perform the soul echo binding immediately. Tonight." "What exactly is this ritual?" Joseph asked. "You've explained it's dangerous, intimate, but—" "It's more than a ritual," Talra interrupted, checking to ensure they weren't being overheard. "It's the deepest form of empathic connection possible between Dahari. In ancient times, when a warrior was mortally wounded, a soul keeper would bind with them, preserving their memories, their essence, so they could be shared with the tribe." She hesitated, her tail curling inward. "With humans, it's never been attempted. Your neural pathways are different. The risk of permanent psychological damage is significant, for both of us. But, if it works, I'll be able to access your memories directly, not just fragments, but the complete experiences. More importantly, I'll be able to stabilize them, prevent them from being erased again." Her eyes met his, intense and determined. "But Joseph, there's something else you should know. This kind of binding, it's not just a medical procedure. Among my people, it's intimate, sacred, typically only performed between life partners or in the most dire circumstances." The implication hung between them, unspoken but unmistakable. Joseph reached out slowly, taking her hand in his, a gesture that felt both foreign and perfectly natural. "I trust you," he said simply, "and if this can help find your sister, expose what they've done, it's worth any risk." That evening, as the twin moons rose over the desert, Joseph and Talra made their preparations in secret. She had brought traditional Dahari ceremonial items to his tent, aromatic herbs that filled the air with a spicy, earthy scent, small crystals that caught and refracted the moonlight, and a shallow bowl of what she called memory water, collected from an underground spring sacred to her people. They were arranging these items in a specific pattern when Elder Kalen appeared at the tent entrance. his massive frame blocking the moonlight. "Healer Talra!" he rumbled, his eyes taking in the ceremonial preparations with evident disapproval. "The human commander seeks audience with the council. His questions are pointed." Talra straightened, facing the elder directly. "Then we must move quickly. You intend to perform the soul echo with this human?" It wasn't a question. Kalen's tail lashed once, betraying his agitation. "Our most sacred connection, shared with one of them, after all they have taken from us?" "Because of what they have taken," Talra countered, her voice steady despite the elder's imposing presence. "His memories may hold the key to finding our missing children. Or it may be a trap," Kalen growled, "a way to steal more of our secrets, corrupt our ways as they have corrupted everything they touch." Joseph rose to his feet, still unsteady but determined. "Elder Kalen, I understand your distrust, but I believe I've seen your people, children, being used for experiments by my own command. If there's any chance of exposing this, of finding them—" "Pretty words," the elder interrupted. "Your kind excels at those, but actions reveal truth, and your military's actions have shown only deception and cruelty." Talra stepped between them, her posture both respectful and resolute. "The soul echo is my right to give. Elder, I take full responsibility for the consequences." "The consequences may affect more than just you." "Healer." Kalen's voice dropped lower. "The human commanders are already suspicious. They speak of security concerns and potential unrest. If they discover what you plan, then we must ensure they don't." Talra's tone was final. "Will you help us, Elder, or will you stand aside?" For a long moment, Kalen was silent, his ancient eyes moving from Talra to Joseph and back again. Finally, he sighed, a deep, rumbling sound like distant thunder. "I will delay them as long as possible," he conceded. "But know this, human, if you betray her trust, if you bring harm to her or to any more of our people, not even your coalition will save you from my wrath." With that, he turned and left, his massive frame dissolving into the shadows beyond the tent. "Well," Joseph said after a moment, attempting a smile, "at least he didn't outright forbid it. He knows what this means to me." Talra returned to arranging the crystals in a circle. "And despite his distrust of humans, he respects the old ways. The choice of binding is sacred and personal." As the night deepened, they completed the preparations. Joseph sat cross-legged in the center of the crystal circle, Talra kneeling before him. The aromatic herbs had been burnt to ash, their essence lingering in the air. "Once we begin, there's no stopping until the binding is complete," she warned, her voice taking on a formal quality. "Your mind will fight it at first, it's a natural defense, but you must surrender to the connection, no matter what memories surface." Joseph nodded, trying to quell the anxiety rising in his chest. "I'm ready." Talra dipped her fingers in the memory water, then pressed them gently to Joseph's temples. The liquid felt cool at first, then began to warm, almost burn, as she started to speak in the ancient Dahari tongue, words that seemed to resonate not in his ears but directly in his mind. The world around them faded, as Joseph felt himself falling into her amber eyes. The tent, and the desert and reality itself dissolving like mist in the morning sun. In their place came memories, his own, but viewed with a clarity he'd never experienced before. The laboratory, the children in containment units, Garrel explaining the program with cold precision, and himself, not a prisoner, not a victim, but an active participant, monitoring equipment, adjusting neural suppressors, recording results with clinical detachment. Then came the moment that had shattered his complicity. A girl with sand-colored fur, looking directly at him as tears streaked her face, whispering in a broken voice, "Please help us." In the memory, he'd hesitated, his hand hovering over the neural suppressor control. In that moment of hesitation, something had changed. a crack in his conditioned loyalty, a spark of the humanity he'd submerged beneath years of military obedience. The memory accelerated. Joseph secretly deactivating security protocols, attempting to free several children. The alarm, Geralt's rage, Marcus Thorne, his friendly demeanor gone, weapon raised, pain as the neural suppressor was turned against him at maximum intensity. Geralt's voice, distant through the agony. Wipe him, all of it, if he ever remembers. It will be the end of the program, the end of everything we've built. Joseph gasped. The force of the memories threatening to overwhelm him. He felt Talra's presence in his mind, steady, anchoring, guiding him through the torrent of recovered experiences. Stay with me. Her voice echoed, both outside and inside his consciousness. We're close. One final memory surfaced, the facility's designation on a secure terminal. Facility, Echo 9. Classified location. Operating under Project Chimera. As abruptly as it had begun, the flood of memories subsided. Joseph found himself back in the tent, drenched in sweat, his heart racing. Talra sat before him, her fur dampened with exertion, her amber eyes now glowing with an inner light that hadn't been there before. "I saw it all," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. "The facility, the children, what they were doing, creating hybrids, weapons with our abilities and their control." Her hands trembled as she lowered them from his temples. "And Lyra, I saw her. Joseph, she was there, in that place." Before Joseph could respond, shouting erupted outside the tent. The heavy tread of boots approached rapidly. "Specialist Caney," Commander Geralt's voice, sharp with authority. "Medical emergency protocols have been authorized. You're being evacuated immediately." Talra's eyes widened in alarm. "They know, somehow. They know what we've done." Joseph struggled to his feet, his mind still reeling from the intensity of the soul echo binding. "We need to stall them. Get word to Elder Kalen." The tent flap was thrown open, revealing Geralt, flanked by Sergeant Thorne and 4 armed security officers. "This is a medical intervention," Geralt announced, his cold gaze taking in the ceremonial arrangement. "Specialist Caney is suffering from severe neural degradation and requires immediate treatment." Talra rose to her full height, imposing despite her exhaustion. "As Chief Medical Officer, I have not authorized any evacuation. His condition is stable." "Your authority has been superseded." Geralt's tone left no room for argument. "Security concerns have been raised to the highest levels. This is now a military matter." Thorne stepped forward, that easy smile back in place, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Let's not make this difficult. Ma'am, we're just looking out for one of our own." Joseph met Talra's gaze, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever happened next, the binding had worked. She had his memories now. The truth couldn't be erased again. "Commander," Joseph said, drawing himself up with military precision despite his weakened state, "I'd like to formally request asylum with the Dahari Council on grounds of witness protection." Geralt's expression didn't change, but a dangerous light entered his eyes. "Denied. Specialist, your neural condition is affecting your judgment. Sedate him." He ordered the medical officer accompanying them. As the officer approached with an injector, Talra moved with unexpected speed, placing herself between Joseph and the approaching humans. "Touch him, and you violate the Interspecies Medical Sovereignty Act. This base is under Dahari jurisdiction." "Step aside, healer." Geralt's voice dropped to a threatening murmur. "Or face charges of interfering with coalition military operations, charges that could extend to your entire council." The standoff stretched like a wire pulled to breaking point, tension crackling in the air between them. Joseph knew they were out of options. Geralt had the authority, the weapons, and the determination to take him by force. But as the commander opened his mouth to issue another order, a new voice spoke from the tent entrance. "What is happening here?" Elder Kalen's massive frame filled the doorway, his powerful presence immediately commanding attention. Behind him stood several Dahari warriors, their posture making it clear they were prepared for conflict. "A medical evacuation?" "Elder," Geralt replied smoothly. "Standard procedure for injured personnel." "Strange," Kalen rumbled. "That standard procedure requires so many armed escorts." His gaze shifted to Talra and Joseph, noting their exhausted state and the remnants of the soul echo ritual. Understanding flashed in his ancient eyes, followed by grim determination. "The human has requested asylum with our council," he stated. "By treaty law, such requests must be formally reviewed before any removal from Dahari territory." Geralt's facade of professional concern slipped momentarily, revealing the cold calculation beneath. "This is a military matter. Elder, treaty provisions for asylum don't apply to active personnel suffering medical emergencies." "Perhaps," Kalen conceded. "But the treaty is quite clear that any dispute regarding jurisdiction must be arbitrated by the Joint Council." His tail swished once, deliberately. Such arbitration typically takes several days to arrange, during which the subject in question must remain in place. It was a temporary solution at best, a legal maneuver that would buy them time, but not victory. Joseph could see the calculation in Geralt's eyes, weighing the diplomatic incident of forcing the issue against the risk of letting Joseph remain. After a long moment, Geralt inclined his head slightly. "Very well. We'll respect protocol, for now." He turned to Joseph. "All pretense gone. Enjoy your reprieve. Specialist. It won't last." As Geralt and his security detail withdrew, Thorn lingered momentarily at the tent entrance. His easy smile was gone, replaced by an expression Joseph couldn't quite read. Regret? Warning? Something else entirely. "Some advice, Joe," he said quietly. "Don't push this. There are things at stake you don't understand. Things bigger than any of us." Then he too was gone, leaving Joseph, Talra, and Elder Kalen in a silence heavy with the knowledge that they had won only the briefest of respites. "They will return with greater authority," Kalen stated flatly. "And next time, diplomatic objections will not deter them." Talra looked to Joseph, her amber eyes still glowing faintly from the soul echo. "Then, we have until dawn to act on what we now know." Joseph nodded, a grim determination settling over him. The memories they had recovered weren't just evidence of crimes against the Dahari children. They were a map leading to where those children might still be held, to where Lyra might be. "Elder," he said, turning to Kalen, "we're going to need your help. What we've discovered, it's worse than anyone imagined." Chapter 4. That's not what happened. Commander Dawn was still hours away when Joseph and Talra finished their preparations. Elder Kalen had stationed 2 Dahari warriors outside the medical tent, ostensibly as ceremonial guards, but everyone understood their true purpose. Inside, Joseph sat cross-legged on the floor, watching Talra arrange a series of small, crystalline devices in a circle around them. "These will amplify and transmit the memories we recover," she explained, adjusting the final crystal, "not just to the Council, but to every Dahari within range of our communications network." "And the base's human personnel?" Joseph asked. Talra's tail swished once, decisively. "Them too. The truth deserves witnesses from both sides." Joseph nodded, though anxiety twisted in his gut. The memories they had recovered during the soul echo binding were fragmentary, but damning, evidence of atrocities committed in the name of military necessity. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more, something even darker lurking beneath the surface of his fractured mind. "We don't have much time," Talra said, checking a small monitoring device. "Geralt has been in communication with Coalition Command for the past hour. Whatever authorization he's seeking, he'll have it soon." Joseph took a deep breath. centering himself. Then let's finish what we started. This time, the ritual began differently. Instead of the formal, measured pace of the first binding, there was an urgency that bordered on desperation. Talra's hands on his temples were firm, almost painful, and the words she spoke in the ancient Dahari tongue seemed to vibrate in the air between them. As consciousness began to shift, Joseph caught a glimpse of movement at the tent entrance, a flash of coalition uniform, the glint of a weapon. Before the physical world dissolved completely, he fell into the space between memories, a swirling void where fragments of his past circled like debris in a storm. Talra's presence anchored him, a fixed point in the chaos, guiding him toward the darkest corners of his mind. Then, with the suddenness of a plunge into icy water, he was back in Facility Echo 9. The memory was crystal clear now, every detail rendered with painful precision. The sterile corridors, the hum of advanced machinery, the containment units with their small, frightened occupants, children taken from their homes under the guise of a cultural exchange program, now subjects in a gruesome experiment. Joseph moved through the memory as both participant and observer, watching his past self perform duties with mechanical precision, monitoring vital signs, administering neural suppressants, recording data for Project Chimera. Commander Gorell strode through the laboratory, reviewing progress reports with cold satisfaction. The splicing is taking hold in Subjects 6 through 12, he noted, gesturing to a row of containment units. The mortality rate is decreasing with each iteration. Memory Joseph spoke, his voice carefully neutral. Sir, Subject 9 is showing signs of neural degradation. The empathic pathways are destabilizing. Increase the suppressants, Geralt ordered dismissively. We need the empathic abilities intact. But under control, these aren't children anymore. Specialist, they're the prototypes for the next generation of intelligence operatives. A technician approached with a data tablet. Sir, the latest scans from Subject 11 are concerning. The human DNA is being rejected at the cellular level. Geralt's expression darkened. Prepare for termination and tissue preservation. We need to understand why this batch is failing. As the technician moved away, Memory Joseph found himself standing before Containment Unit 7. Inside, a young Dahari female with sand-colored fur watched him with eyes that seemed too old for her face. Eyes the exact shade of amber as Talra's. Help us, she whispered, her small hand pressed against the transparent barrier. Please. Something broke in Memory. Joseph then, a fracture in the conditioning, the compartmentalization, the moral compromises that had allowed him to participate in this horror. He looked around the facility with new eyes, seeing not a research project, but a crime against sentience itself. That night, he had acted. Using his security clearance, he disabled the alarms on 3 containment units. Just 3. All he could manage without triggering the facility's automated security protocols. He led the children through maintenance corridors toward an emergency exit, hoping to reach the shuttle bay. They were nearly there when the alarms blared to life. Emergency barriers slammed down, cutting off their escape. And then Gorell was there, rage contorting his usually controlled features. I'm disappointed. Specialist, he said, his voice terrifyingly calm despite the fury in his eyes. I thought you understood the importance of our work here. Behind him stood Sergeant Marcus Thorne, weapon raised, expression conflicted. Joe, don't make this worse than it already is. Stand down. Memory. Joseph pushed the children behind him. This isn't research. Marcus, it's torture. It's murder. It's war, Geralt countered. A war for the future of humanity. These hybrids will give us capabilities no conventional force could match. Empathic intelligence gathering, psychic warfare, the ability to sense threats before they materialize. They're children. They're assets. Geralt's voice hardened. And you've just proven yourself a liability. He nodded to Thorne. Contain him. The shot came without warning, a neural disruptor pulse that dropped Memory Joseph to his knees. Agony exploding through his nervous system. As darkness encroached on his vision, he heard Geralt issuing orders. Full memory wipe. Fabricate a combat incident on Eridani 6. Then transfer him somewhere remote while he recovers. Urasha base should do. The Dahari there are compliant enough. Thorn's voice. Hesitant. Sir, neural wipes at this level are experimental. The long-term effects are irrelevant. Geralt snapped. If he ever remembers what happened here, it will be the end of Project Chimera. The end of everything we've built. As Memory Joseph lost consciousness, he caught a final glimpse of the young Dahari girl being dragged back to her containment unit. Her amber eyes fixed on him in silent accusation. The memory shifted. Fragments reassembling into a new scene. Medical bay. Geralt, standing over him as technicians prepared neural suppression equipment. A shame. Geralt was saying to someone out of sight. He was one of our best, but we can't risk him compromising the program. Especially now that we're entering the final phase. What about the others in his unit? A voice Joseph didn't recognize. They've all been exposed to the same classified information. Geralt's smile was cold. Insurance policy. Every member of the memory suppression team has been implanted with a neural kill switch. If one talks, they all die. A rather effective deterrent, wouldn't you say? The technician approached with a neural emitter, far more powerful than the one Joseph had found in his armor. Ready. Sir. Proceed. Geralt ordered. And be thorough. I want nothing left. The memory exploded in white-hot pain as the emitter activated at full power. Joseph gasped. The intensity of the recovered memory threatening to overwhelm him. But Talra's presence in his mind held firm, anchoring him, absorbing the trauma of the memory while preserving its truth. Distantly, he became aware of commotion in the physical world. Shouting. The sound of the tent flap being thrown open. Kalen's thunderous roar of protest. But these were background noise compared to the hurricane of memory and emotion surging between him and Talra. Through their connection, he felt her channeling the recovered memories outward, broadcasting them through the crystal array to every communications device on the base and directly into the shared empathic network of the Dahari. Not just the images and sounds, but the emotions attached to them, the horror, the violation, the betrayal. Somewhere, alarms began to wail. Security protocols activating as classified information spread uncontrolled across the base's networks. But it was too late to contain it. The truth was out. Witnessed by hundreds, Joseph opened his eyes to chaos. Coalition security forces had entered the tent. Weapons drawn, Elder Kalen and his warriors stood in defensive positions, creating a barrier between the humans and the still-connected Joseph and Talra. Commander Geralt stood just inside the entrance, his face a mask of cold fury. "Stand down immediately," he ordered, his voice cutting through the din. "This is a breach of Coalition security protocols. Anyone interfering will be charged with treason." Joseph struggled to his feet, the connection with Talra fading but not broken. "That's not going to work. Commander, everyone knows now. Everyone has seen what you did, what I helped you do." "What they've seen is a fabrication," Geralt countered smoothly. "Neural trauma can create false memories, especially when manipulated by Dahari empathic techniques." He gestured toward Talra. "This healer has compromised a wounded soldier's mind for her own agenda." "The memories are genuine," Talra said, her voice resonating with a power Joseph hadn't heard before. "And they've been verified against our own records of missing children. 28 taken, at least 15 confirmed in your facility." Geralt's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Sergeant Thorn, secure the specialists. We're leaving immediately." Thorn stepped forward, his easy manner gone, replaced by military precision. But as he moved toward Joseph, a commotion erupted from the crowd gathering outside the tent. A young female Dahari pushed through, stumbling as if disoriented. Her fur was sand-colored, her build slight, and despite the years that had passed, Joseph recognized her instantly. The girl from Containment Unit 7. Now grown, but unmistakable. Lyra! Talra's voice broke on the name. Disbelief and hope warring in her expression. The young woman's eyes, Talra's eyes, widened in recognition. Sister? For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then Garel's voice cut through the silence. Cold and precise. Detain all of them. Security breach protocol. He turned to the communications officer beside him. Activate contingency measures. Authorization, Garel Omega-9. Joseph felt his blood turn to ice. The kill switch. He lunged forward, trying to reach Garel. No, you can't! Thorne intercepted him, restraining him with practiced efficiency. Don't make it worse. Joe. He's activating the kill switch, Joseph shouted, struggling against Thorne's grip. There are dozens of soldiers with those implants. He's going to murder them all to cover this up. A flicker of doubt crossed Thorne's face. What are you talking about? The memory suppression team. Everyone who worked at Echo 9. We all have neural implants. Insurance policy. He called it. If one talks, they all die. Thorne's grip loosened slightly. Commander? Garel's expression remained impassive. He's delusional. The trauma and the Dahari mind manipulation have compromised his judgment. But doubt had been sown. The communications officer hesitated, her hand hovering over the console. Sir, if there's any possibility, execute the order. Garel snapped. That's a direct command. In the momentary confusion, Talra moved with unexpected speed. Her hand shot out, catching Garel's wrist in a grip that made him wince. The soul echo doesn't just recover memories, she said, her voice deadly quiet. It preserves them, duplicates them, what Joseph knows. I now know. And what I know has already been transmitted to every Dahari within 100 miles. Garel tried to pull away, but her grip tightened. You've lost. Commander, the truth is out. You have no idea what you've done, Garel hissed, abandoning pretense. Project Chimera is vital to Coalition security. The empathic capabilities we've developed could end wars before they begin. By turning children into weapons, Elder Kalen's voice rumbled with barely contained rage. By destroying their minds and bodies for your advantage. By ensuring human dominance in a galaxy that would destroy us if given the chance. Garel shot back. You think the Dahari are the only species with special abilities. There are threats out there that conventional weapons can't touch. Joseph broke free from Thorne's now loose grip. That doesn't justify what you did, what you made us do. A tense silence fell over the tent, broken only by the continuing alarms and the murmur of the growing crowd outside. Joseph could feel the balance shifting, the weight of revealed truth tipping the scales away from Garel's authority. Then, Lyra stepped forward, her movements hesitant but determined. I remember you, she said, looking directly at Joseph. You tried to help us escape. You were the only one who saw us as children, not test subjects. She turned to Garel, and despite her small stature, there was a power in her presence that made the commander take an involuntary step back. And I remember you, too. Every test, every procedure, every child who didn't survive your improvements. The communications officer slowly lowered her hand from the console, making a deliberate choice. Around the tent, Coalition personnel exchanged uneasy glances, the chain of command visibly fracturing as the moral implications of what they'd witnessed sank in. Thorne was the first to act. With sudden resolution, he stepped forward and placed restraining cuffs on Garel's wrists. Commander Garel, you're being detained pending investigation into illegal human experimentation, conspiracy to commit murder, and violations of the Interspecies Rights Accord. Garel's face contorted with rage. This is treason. Sergeant, you'll regret this. Maybe, Thorne acknowledged, but I'll be able to live with myself. He glanced at Joseph. Something I haven't done in a long time. As Coalition security led Garel away, Joseph felt a weight lift from his shoulders. the burden of complicity, of buried truth, of enforced ignorance. But in its place settled a new weight, responsibility for what came next. Talra moved to Lyra. Their reunion, a private island of joy in the midst of the chaos. Watching them embrace, Joseph felt both outside and essential to the moment. The unwitting catalyst who had brought both destruction and restoration. Elder Kalen approached, his ancient eyes regarding Joseph with a new, complex emotion that wasn't quite forgiveness, but was no longer pure distrust. "What you have revealed today will change everything between our peoples," he said gravely. "Not all wounds can be healed with truth." "No," Joseph agreed, "but lies can't heal them either." Outside, the twin suns of Tajak IV began to rise over the desert, casting long shadows across the base as the first day of a new reality dawned. Chapter 5, Between Worlds. We choose each other. The weeks following Geralt's arrest unfolded in a blur of diplomatic chaos and legal maneuvering. Coalition High Command dispatched an investigative team that arrived within days, their expressions grim as they reviewed the evidence transmitted through Talra's crystal array. The facility designated Echo 9 was located and secured, yielding more Dahari children, some irrevocably altered by the experiments, others still capable of rehabilitation. Joseph spent those days in a state of limbo, neither prisoner nor free man. His quarters had been moved from the medical tent to a small dwelling on the outskirts of the Dahari settlement, where he was kept under observation, ostensibly for his own protection. Though the guards outside his door suggested otherwise, Talra visited daily, bringing updates on Lyra's recovery and the political storm brewing in coalition headquarters. Elder Kalen had become an unexpected ally, his ancient voice carrying weight in the interspecies negotiations that followed. "They're trying to contain it," Talra told Joseph one evening as they sat watching the twin moons rise. "Classify it as a rogue operation with no official sanction." "And the children?" Joseph asked. Though he already knew the answer, her tail flicked once, betraying her anger despite her controlled tone. "Compensation is being discussed. Rehabilitation programs. The usual bureaucratic response to atrocity." Joseph nodded, unsurprised. He had seen it before. The machinery of damage control activating to protect the coalition's image, while sacrificing a few convenient scapegoats. Geralt would be prosecuted. Certainly, perhaps a few others directly involved in Project Chimera, but the higher authorities who had approved and funded the program would remain untouched, protected by layers of plausible deniability. "And me?" he asked quietly. "What happens to the whistleblower, who can't remember which side he was really on?" Talra studied him, her amber eyes reflecting the moonlight. "The coalition investigators want to debrief you tomorrow, with your memories restored. You're their primary witness." "Or their primary target," Joseph murmured. She reached out, her hand covering his. "I'll be there. The soul echo created a bond they can't break. Whatever you face, you won't face it alone." That night, Joseph dreamed of corridors. Endless, sterile corridors leading to rooms filled with forgotten faces. Not just Dahari children, but humans too. Coalition soldiers, civilians, diplomats, all looking at him with the same empty expression as their memories were systematically erased, reconfigured, replaced with convenient fictions. He woke gasping, drenched in sweat despite the cool desert night. The dream clung to him, too vivid, too specific to be mere nightmare. With growing dread, he realized it wasn't a dream at all, but another memory surfacing from the depths. By dawn, the full picture had emerged, pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. Joseph sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his hands that had administered neural suppressants to countless victims, not just in Facility Echo 9, but in similar installations across coalition space. Before his act of rebellion, before he had tried to save those Dahari children, Joseph Caney had been one of Garel's most trusted operatives, a specialist in memory suppression and reconstruction. He had participated in dozens of operations, erasing inconvenient truths from the minds of those who had seen too much, replacing them with manufactured narratives that served coalition interests. The truth was a blade twisting in his gut. He hadn't been an unwitting participant or a late convert to the cause of justice. He had been a willing enforcer of the system, a loyal soldier following orders without question, until something inside him finally broke. When Talra arrived that morning, she found him sitting motionless, his face a mask of self-loathing. "I remember everything now," he said without preamble. "Not just Echo 9, everything before." Her expression softened with understanding. She had known. He realized. Through the soul echo, she had glimpsed the full extent of his complicity. "How can you even look at me?" he asked, his voice raw. "After what I've done?" Talra settled beside him, her tail curling around her feet. "The man who performed those acts isn't the man sitting before me now." "He is. I am." Joseph's hands clenched into fists. "I didn't just work at Echo 9. I was Garrel's specialist, his cleanup crew. When someone saw something they shouldn't, a politician, a journalist, even our own soldiers, I was the one who made them forget." "Until you couldn't anymore," she said quietly. "Until something in you rebelled against what you'd become." Joseph shook his head, unable to accept the absolution she offered. One moment of conscience doesn't erase years of crimes. "No," Talra agreed. "It doesn't. But it can be the beginning of atonement." Before Joseph could respond, a commotion outside drew their attention. Through the window, they could see Sergeant Thorne approaching, accompanied by 2 coalition investigators in formal uniforms. "Showtime," Joseph muttered, rising to his feet. The debriefing lasted hours, conducted in a sterile conference room, hastily set up in one of the base's administrative buildings. Joseph recounted everything, not just the horrors of Project Chimera, but his own role in the broader system of memory manipulation that had allowed such projects to remain hidden. The investigators' faces remained impassive, their questions precise and methodical. Only occasionally did a flicker of disgust or disbelief cross their features, quickly suppressed beneath professional detachment. Throughout it all, Talra remained at his side, her presence both comfort and witness. When the questioning turned to the neural kill switches implanted in the memory suppression teams, she intervened directly. "These soldiers are victims as much as perpetrators," she insisted. "The implants must be neutralized immediately." The senior investigator, a stern-faced woman named Commander Velez, regarded Talra with a mixture of respect and wariness. "The technical challenges are significant. These devices were integrated at the neural level, designed to be irreversible. I have Joseph's memories of their design and implementation," Talra countered. "And we Dahari understand neural pathways differently than your scientists. Together, we can find a solution." This was how Joseph found himself, 3 days later, working alongside Talra and a team of coalition medical specialists, using his insider knowledge to help develop a procedure to neutralize the kill switches without damaging the host's brains. The work was painstaking, requiring Joseph to recall technical specifications he had only glimpsed in his time with Garrel. But with Talra's help, accessing memories through their lingering soul echo connection, they eventually succeeded. The first successful neutralization was performed on Sergeant Thorne, who had volunteered despite the risks. "Why did you do it?" Joseph asked him afterward, as Thorne recovered in the medical bay. "Why turn against Garrel in that moment?" Thorne was silent for a long moment, his usually easy manner subdued. "I joined up to protect people," he said, finally. "Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of what that meant." He glanced toward the window, where Lyra could be seen talking with other recovered Dahari children. "When you forget why you're fighting, you'll fight for anything, even monsters." As weeks turned to months, The legal proceedings against Geralt and his direct subordinates ground forward. Joseph provided testimony via secure transmission, his words helping to build a case that even the Coalition's most skilled damage control specialists couldn't entirely contain. But there were powerful interests determined to limit the fallout. A campaign began, subtle at first, then increasingly overt. To discredit Joseph's testimony, reports surfaced, questioning his mental stability, suggesting his memories had been influenced by Dahari empathic manipulation. Military psychologists were produced who testified that the soul echo binding could have created false memories, manufactured by Talra to serve her own agenda. They're trying to bury it, Joseph told Talra one evening, as they reviewed the latest transmissions from Coalition headquarters. Turn it into a case of one rogue commander, rather than systematic abuse. They won't succeed entirely, she replied. Too many witnesses now, too many survivors. She gestured toward the rehabilitation center that had been established on the outskirts of Urasha Base, where Lyra worked with the children recovered from Echo 9. The truth has a way of persisting, even when powerful forces try to suppress it. Joseph watched the children through the window, some fully Dahari, others showing the subtle signs of genetic manipulation. Their resilience amazed him, their capacity for joy despite what they had endured. It was a daily reminder of why the fight for truth mattered, whatever the personal cost. When the time came for Joseph to make a formal decision about his future, the choice was easier than he had expected. The Coalition offered a quiet retirement on Earth, with a generous pension, contingent, of course, on his signing extensive non-disclosure agreements. The alternative was to remain on Tijak 4 as a liaison to the rehabilitation program, helping to rebuild what Project Chimera had destroyed. He chose to stay, 6 months after Geralt's arrest. Joseph stood on the same rocky overlook where he had experienced his most vivid flashback. The rehabilitation center sprawled below, its buildings a blend of human and Dahari architecture, a physical manifestation of the new understanding being forged between their peoples. He heard soft footsteps behind him and turned to find Talra approaching, her amber eyes reflecting the sunset. Beside her walked Lyra, her once traumatized demeanor now replaced by a quiet confidence. The last of the children have been cleared for integrative therapy, Lyra reported. Even those with the most extensive modifications are showing progress. Joseph nodded, a complicated mix of emotions twisting in his chest. Pride in what they had accomplished, grief for what had been lost, and always the weight of his own past actions. I've been thinking about returning to the Soul Echo, Talra said, her voice soft, not to recover more memories, but to address them. The Dahari believe that true healing requires not just remembering, but reconciling with the past. Joseph looked at her, understanding the offer beneath her words. You think there's reconciliation possible for what I've done? I think, Lyra interjected, her voice gentle but firm, that the man who helped create our wounds is not the same man who has worked tirelessly to heal them. Joseph turned back to the vista, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. I've been trying to make sense of it all, how I could have been that person, how I could have done those things. The system you served was designed to compartmentalize morality, Talra said, to make good people participate in evil by narrowing their vision until they could no longer see the whole. But I did see. Eventually, Joseph murmured. Too late for so many, but I did see, and chose to act, Lyra added. That's the part that matters most. They stood in silence as night fell completely, the twin moons casting their pale blue light across the desert. In the distance, the lights of Urasha Base twinkled like earthbound stars, humans and Dahari moving among them as the barriers between their worlds slowly dissolved. There's a Dahari saying, Talra said finally. The truth may wound, but lies poison. You chose the wound over the poison. Joseph, for yourself and for all of us. She stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. The same gesture she had made when they first met, but now charged with shared history, shared pain, shared hope. And truth has a curious property, she continued, her voice soft. Given time and care, even its deepest wounds can heal. Joseph covered her hand with his own, feeling the warmth of her fur against his skin. The path ahead was still uncertain, fraught with challenges both personal and political. The full reckoning for Project Chimera was far from complete. The fight against similar abuses ongoing. But in this moment, as he stood between worlds with those who had every reason to reject him, yet had chosen to walk beside him instead, Joseph found something he had thought forever beyond his reach. Not absolution, but the possibility of redemption. Not forgetting, but moving forward. Not alone, but connected. The desert wind picked up, carrying the scent of night-blooming flowers and distant rain. A new season approaching, full of possibility. Come, Talra said simply. There's work to be done. And together, they descended from the overlook, returning to the light.